All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's policy session of the Phoenix City Council for Tuesday, December 15th, 2015. We do have a quorum present for today's meeting. First item on our agenda is to see if any council members have information or follow-up requests they would like to make to the city manager or the public. Council members. Does anyone have any information or follow-up requests? Councilman Elkowski.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming out to that great movie in the park at Margaret Hans Park. We had a great turnout. We had a holiday theme, and people were making their own Christmas ornaments, and it turned out really, really nice. So I want to thank the Parks and Rec for all their support, and especially Dignity Health for being a great partner of the community and helps sponsor this event. Also, last weekend, I had the opportunity to be a judge for the Tamale Festival. It turned out to be a great turnout right here in front of City Hall. The streets were packed, and a lot of Christmas shoppers were out there buying Christmas gifts from local vendors. So I just want to thank individuals that are out there and supporting our local businesses and buying local and supporting the city of Phoenix. Also, last night we had about 230 pastors from Phoenix, Hispanic pastors that had their Christmas holiday right here at the City Hall atrium, and they were just really thankful for allowing them to have their Christmas gathering at City Hall, and they had an opportunity to pray over the city and all the elected officials, and once again, what a great partnership with the spiritual community, the pastors that are out there, to have such a great event like that. And then lastly, I just want to remind everyone that, we need to take care for the less fortunate that are out there during this holiday season. And if you need any help finding a nonprofit, a place to take your children to experience that, call our office and we'll hook you up with the right nonprofit organization or a group that's out there helping out the homeless or the less fortunate. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman DeCiccio.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to start off with the politically incorrect saying Merry Christmas. Have a great New Year as well. Hopefully 2016 turns out to be a good one for a lot of people, and we also need to make sure that we keep individuals in our prayers and in our minds as we go through this holiday season. Not everybody gets to have the same opportunities that a lot of us get to have and have that, and they have difficulty in their lives and they have a very difficult time. Some of them are homeless. Some of them are just having a very difficult time, and I think this is the time for us to be able to think of care and respect for those people that are having a difficult time. I want to introduce PJ Immordino. We did it briefly. PJ, if you could stand up. I was going to do it at the last policy meeting. PJ is the new intern in our office. He is an amazing young individual, and he is what our future is in our country, in our state, and in our city. PJ went to Scottsdale Christian Academy. It's one of the schools he went to. He was born here in Arizona. He's planning on going to Arizona State University, but what makes him special, and this is with Kate and her family, Kate's husband is also a Marine, but PJ is an ex-Marine. He's the individual in my office. He sustained an IED blast when he was in Afghanistan in a tour. And there are people like him that have really done everything for us and kept us safe. And PJ, we owe you an incredible debt of gratitude from the city of Phoenix, not just to you, but to everybody. And when we talk about Christmas and we talk about the holidays, we need to think of people like PJ. Craig Doyle, who's my chief of staff, who is also a veteran. I had them come down here specifically. It's because when we are enjoying our families here in Arizona, many individuals have their families out of the country and doing things that we don't do. They're not, they're out there protecting us, and they're out there looking over us and making sure that we're safe. So not only do we need to give the gratitude to those individuals that are in the military and those police officers that are out there protecting us day in and day out, but we also need to remember their families and how difficult it is on their families and the amount of worry that they go through. Usually, and I've had this conversation with my staff on it, they're out there, they know they've got a job to do, but it's that family member that's sleeping up, staying awake at night, wondering what's happening to their husband or their wife. They don't know what's happening because they're out of the country, they're sustaining blasts, they're attacks, and they're doing everything they can to protect us, but their families are the ones that are really the ones that have the most difficult time. So I think all of us, and for those of you that are viewing this, if you could say a special prayer for those individuals that are out there protecting us to keep them safe, but also for their families, in particular their families. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Welcome to City Hall. Thanks for your service. Other council members? Councilman Pastor, please.
First, I would like to congratulate Inger Erickson and Cindy Stotler, who have been officially named, Inger as the new Parks and Recs Director and Cindy as the Housing Director. I know that the both women had a very competitive process, and I congratulate them for their new position. And lastly, I would just like to wish everyone of all faiths and persuasions a safe, happy, and blessed holiday season. As we come to the end of another year, we should reflect on everything we were able to achieve together for the families and the communities in the city, and prepare ourselves for all of the tough work and challenges that await us in our coming year. I'm confident that we can once again work collaboratively and respectfully to promote an agenda that's reasonable and responsible and meets the vital needs of everyone we serve, especially our communities, our neighborhoods, and want to leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Councilman Gates?
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, actually last Thursday, December 10th, was the Senior Services Annual Volunteer Reception. Always a great event every year to recognize all the folks who volunteer in our senior centers around the city of Phoenix. In the last year, we have had at the Sunny Slope Senior Center in my district over 3,000 hours of volunteer time to help our seniors. And at Shadow Mountain Senior Center, also in my district, over 3,800 volunteer hours. So we just really want to thank all of the folks who volunteered. In fact, around the city, we had over 130,000 volunteer hours, which equals about a $3 million in-kind contribution. So again, it's just been amazing how people have stepped up, especially in these tough times, as we'll be talking about budget later, that these volunteers make a big difference. Wanted to thank everyone at Arizona Christian University for having me out on Saturday for their fall commencement exercise. Had the opportunity to give the commencement address. Over 500 people there, and it's just great the things that are going on there at ACU within District 3. And
They're not leaving. They're staying.
They are not leaving. That's right. I spoke with President Len Munsell, and Mayor, I know you're a big basketball fan, and he mentioned that last year, President Munsell mentioned that the Grand Canyon, Freudian slip. The Arizona Christian, Vice Mayor, Arizona Christian team made it to the Sweet 16 in NAIA, and they've got a lot of players back from that team, so they're going to try and go even farther in the tournament, which, by the way, is the oldest college basketball tournament. It's actually older than the NCAA tournament, and it's at Kemper Arena in Kansas City. So a little bit of basketball trivia for you there. Also, we had the Global Family Philanthropy Holiday Party at the Sunny Slope Youth Center on Saturday. And Global Family Philanthropy, which is actually a group which does a lot of help for orphanages in Haiti, they've decided to adopt Sunny Slope as kind of a local area for them to support. They donated $5,000 to the Sunny Slope Youth Center, and they also had 60 children were able to walk away from that event with a gift. So we really want to thank Global Family Philanthropy for their support of that event. On Wednesday, December 16th, we have the North 32nd Street Public Art Meeting. We have a public art project that is going to be coming, and we will have the artist there, so folks will have the opportunity to meet with her and give her input on that effort. It's going to be at the Shadow Mountain Senior Center, which is at 3546 East Sweetwater, and that'll be on Wednesday, December 16th from 5:30 to 6:30. So if you have an interest in that project, please come out. And finally, would like to invite everyone to the City of Phoenix Council inauguration, which is going to be on Monday, January 4th, 2016 at 10 a.m. at the Orpheum Theater. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman, for that information and that excellent college basketball trivia. Much appreciated. Councilwoman Gallego can use that next time she's at Rose and Crown with Congressman Gallego for trivia night at the bar. Absolutely. All right, any other members of the council have information? Councilwoman Gallego.
Wonderful.
Speaking
thank
of Rose
you.
and Crown.
Exactly. A fine District 8 establishment. Would join my colleagues in wishing everyone a happy holiday season. And today is my grandmother's 99th birthday, so happy birthday to Grandma Harriet. Today is also the busiest brownie shipping day of the year for District 8's Fairy Tale Brownies, so thank you to everyone who is shopping local as they enjoy their holiday season and helping us with some of the difficult issues we will be facing later in today's council meeting. So if you have had any brownies today, you know you are doing your part for the city of Phoenix, and maybe have a second brownie just to support the city and our economic development. And speaking of economic development, we were very excited to welcome Galvanize into the city last week, and the Warehouse District, which has just been such an exciting area to represent so much of our history becoming so much of our future in the city of Phoenix. So looking forward to that vote on tomorrow's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. If I could just also mention Galvanize, Councilwoman Gallego worked hard. This was truly a team effort. Mayor Stanton, myself, and Councilwoman Gallego welcomed Galvanize along with Chris Mackey, who I don't see here, but Paul Boone, of course, our city manager at Zerker, other partners, GPEC, several others, WebPT, so many others have come together to make Phoenix the place to be for Galvanize to expand. To give you an idea of what they do, this is an education-based co-working space. It's an organization that has found a way to put 2 years of computer science, engineering, education, condense it down to just a few months. And in their other campuses in Colorado, in Seattle, and San Francisco, they are graduating about 1,000 people each year, 97% placement, an average salary of about $85,000 a year. So this adds to the talent that we are producing right here in Phoenix to go along with what we have out of ASU and the U of A and GCU and the list goes on. This does a couple of things. It equips our workforce with the tools needed to compete in 21st century industries, but it also tells those industries that this is where the talent is and you should bring your business here to Phoenix. So that's a huge win for all of us. We're excited to continue to work with them. Speaking of the startup community, tonight we'll be joining, I have the privilege of joining the entrepreneurial startup and business community for a night at Stand Up Live, the SPHX community, along with the Arizona Business Incubation Association, one and the same, and of course GPEC. We're all coming together to have a good time at Stand Up Live. It's going to be a good time this evening. And log on to phoenix.gov/District 5, where you can search Yes PHX. We have a television show. Last week we featured Chris Camacho and the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, GPEC. This week you'll see Jeff Seville, the Executive Director of Center for Innovation, Entrepreneurial Innovation, CEI. They are featured. It's all about the talent we have here in Phoenix and driving our economy forward, and it's been a good time. Lastly, Mayor Stanton and I made the announcement, the Northwest Light Rail Extension. We had a press conference. It was a great time. Lots of neighborhood leaders, business leaders came out to the Northwest Light Rail Extension, 19th Avenue in Bethany. The extension's going from Bethany to Dunlap, 3.2-mile stretch. And you'll notice a lot of the cones have been cleared. We still have some cones out there. The trains are now being tested. It's very exciting for this particular community. The grand opening, the ribbon cutting, will be on March 19th. So we look forward to connecting an additional 5,000 daily riders, connecting 6 schools, places of worship, grocery stores, nearby senior housing facilities. There's a community that will be connected through light rail to the additional 23 miles that has been laid out throughout the valley. So it's just very exciting things happening in District 5 and throughout the city. Thanks.
Thank you so very much. Any other council members? All right, I believe that there is no call for consent agenda, but there is a call for an executive session. Vice Mayor, would you like to make a motion on that?
Mayor, in accordance with a properly posted notice and agenda, I move that the City Council pursuant to Arizona Revised Statute, Section 38-431.02.a, meet in executive session on Tuesday, January 12th, 2016 at 1 p.m. in the East Conference Room, 12th floor at Phoenix City Hall, 200 West Washington Street, Phoenix, Arizona.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Next on the agenda, we have a budget update as our formal agenda item. Mr. City Manager, is any other reports that you'd like to provide to this council? So let's move immediately on to item number 2 on our agenda, which is 2016-17 early general fund budget status. Mr. Zerker.
Mayor, thank you, members of the council. As we'll get set up here today, I have with me Budget and Research Director Jeff Barton and Chief Financial Officer Denise Olson. We have their staff in the audience as well, people who've all been working hard on the budget and our financial status. We're here to give you an early view of our 2016-17 building blocks of the budget. And I want to just take a couple minutes up front to talk about it. Overall, I would label the information we're going to share with you today cautiously optimistic. And I'm going to explain both of those words and how they relate here. So first of all, optimistic, because we've seen revenue slowly recover with the economy to about where we were at the peak in the mid-2000s. City employees continue to rise to the challenge to save money and be efficient while providing outstanding services to the public. We've worked hard to eliminate the projected deficit from the upcoming budget, as you'll see. And this leaves us some resources to deal with the challenges that we face. And we've made choices to grow our contingency reserve, and we provided several years of property tax relief. So all of that lends to some optimism. However, emphasize the word cautious because of some of the challenges we face. On the revenue side, we won't have information about our crucial holiday sales tax until early February, which is when the December numbers are in. Some of the spending savings we've identified is one-time savings, not ongoing, and so that means we can't add ongoing things with that money, although it gives us some breathing room. There are also, we'll talk about some concerns with proposed cuts to revenue by the state legislature, like income and rental taxes, and some cuts that have already happened, like contracting taxes. On the expense side, we know we have growing pension costs, especially in police and fire. We have labor contracts that we're negotiating starting in January, and we have a strong desire for more services, like police body cameras or park rangers. We also have debt service demands on our property taxes, and so those things together are part of the caution that we have as we make tough choices in our budget for 2016-17. I would say we can be cautiously optimistic today because of your direction to staff to pay focused year-round attention on our budget process. The information we share today is not an accident. It's because you and city staff have worked hard together to be responsible and reasonable about our budget challenges. Just to review, beginning in early 2014, we took a 5-year budget forecast and looked at the long-term impact of yearly decisions. We did that again in February of 2015. We constantly evaluate our budget position and our revenue forecasting. We achieved our innovation efficiency goal, and we continue zero-based budgeting. As a result of that focused effort, we're cautiously optimistic about erasing a projected budget deficit, and we will also take responsible and reasonable approaches to the challenges that remain, and we'll talk to you about 6 of those. So today's item is not for any action. It's really to begin the dialogue before we have more information in the coming 2 months, as I laid out before, on revenue and expenses. So this is the starting point for our conversation, and we're going to jump in. So just to give some context on our budget. When we talk about the budget, we're really talking about general fund budget. We'll get there. And we talk about the building blocks are, first of all, resources. So in the chart in front of you, It shows we basically have our resources for the general fund come in thirds. 1/3, a little more than a third, is our local sales tax, very important. Shop Phoenix, shop local Phoenix. Another third is our state shared revenue that we share with the state of Arizona based on constitutional provisions with several different sources. The other third is divided up among primary property tax, which we're going to talk more about at the end, user fees and other revenues, ambulance billings, parking meters, fines and forfeitures in the courts, those sorts of things. And then other resources are the money we get when we sell services to our enterprise departments. That makes up a $1.16 billion general fund budget. On the expense side, no surprise, the largest expense we have is in the area of public safety and criminal justice. We'd have a little bit of general fund and transportation, not a whole lot. And community development and enrichment is our next largest portion, which is neighborhood services, parks, and libraries. And then as you see, the other things. General government is less than 10%. That's the overhead for accounting, auditing, mayor and council staff, manager staff, and all those things. That's 8% of our general fund. Another way to look at our budget is in this chart, the bar chart. The words are little, but on the far left, the tallest lines are police and fire. Together, about $700 million of our $1 billion budget go into the police and fire departments. When you also add in the municipal court and our prosecutors, that's where you get to that very large portion for public safety. And that clearly is the priority of the mayor and the council and the public. And so the rest of the general fund budget tails off there, with Parks and Recreation being the third largest. With that now, I'll turn it to our Budget and Research Director, Jeff Barton, who will talk a little bit about our early general fund status.
Mayor, members of the council, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'm really excited to be able to present this information to you. I think we've accomplished a lot over the last couple of months. And before I begin, I do want to acknowledge and recognize exactly what Ed said. None of this happens without the leadership that you guys provide us. In addition to that, none of this happens without the hard work and sacrifice of our City of Phoenix employees. It's imperative that we continue to work collectively to address this issue, and I think as a result, you'll see what we can accomplish when we all work together. So what I want to do is walk you through where we are in our process. We are still going through our zero-based budget process. We're not yet done, but we're at a point where I think we can share some pretty good information with you. So what I want to do is rewind. So let's go back 10 months from now, about February 2015. What we did at that point in time, we shared with you a 5-year forecast. That 5-year forecast identified a potential shortfall in the 16-17 budget year of roughly $31 to $58 million. That forecast was largely based on an assumption that departments would spend their budgets for this fiscal year and spend their budgets next fiscal year. What City Manager and I talked to you about or discussed with you back in September, that we were not going to let that happen, that we were going to work aggressively to reduce the footprint of the budget in the current fiscal year as well as in the base fiscal year. And so that's what we're talking about today. So what's changed? What has changed since the 5-year forecast that we presented in February? Number one was something that we talked to you back in September about. We discussed with you in September, based on 14-15 actuals, we saved an additional $25 million over and above our projected fund balance. That $25 million is something that was available for us to help offset this potential deficit, and it's still there for us today. The other thing that we did as part of our technical review process, we have a zero-based budget process. And I explained to you last time that we go through a very rigorous process. We analyze every line item, line by line, department by department. And what I did this year, being the newbie, I challenged our departments. I asked each one of them to identify initial challenge. I asked each one of them to identify savings in the current fiscal year that could be one-time savings, as well as to identify ongoing savings in the base year. It's something that we've done in the past, but it's been a while since we've done it. Those savings in total over the 2 fiscal years that we're talking about, if we get there and we're still evaluating some of the submissions, it's a total of about $23 million that we could save over the course of the 2 fiscal years. The other thing that we've talked about, and we talked about this a little bit in September, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it today because we will come back and discuss this with you a little bit further or a little bit later in the budget process, and it's our vacancies. As you know, over the last couple of years, we've seen a pretty big exodus out of the city from retirements. There are various reasons as to why that's happening. A lot of it has to do with the age of our employees. But over the last 3 fiscal years, we've lost about 1,300 employees to retirement. And we don't see that changing anytime soon. In fact, over the next 5 fiscal years, an additional 2,500 folks will become eligible to retire. So when you add that to what we have currently in vacancies, we see additional savings. And we'll talk to you later in our budget process a little bit more about what we plan to do or what we're proposing to do with those vacancies. The other thing that we've done, based on the direction that we received from you, our HR department has been very aggressive in addressing our healthcare costs, and folks like Mary Kyle, who's here in the audience today, and Cindy Besry have been very aggressive at reducing our healthcare costs. And based on what we're looking at currently in our process, over the next 2 fiscal years, we anticipate saving about $6 million from the budget in terms of healthcare. The final item that I wanted to talk to you about in terms of what's changed since the 5-year forecast are reduced fuel costs. When we presented the 5-year forecast last year, who would have known that fuel would continue to be on this steady decline? Who would have known that we were going to see the number of vacancies that we have now? Those vacancies help us reduce our fuel costs. We have fewer folks out there in the streets. We have fewer miles being consumed, as well as fewer gallons of gas being consumed. In addition to that, we see the price of oil. Just recently, this week, OPEC released information about oil being traded at $37 a barrel. We know that's not going to continue long term, but while it's here, we benefit from the savings. All in all, what does this mean? So as Ed mentioned, we're talking about cautious optimism. So when we take all of these things together and we look at them, what that means is for 16-17, we are now projecting that the deficit is gone, and in fact, we have a balanced budget to a potential surplus of about $25 million. Again, to borrow the words from the city manager, cautiously optimistic. In doing this work and in doing our analysis, there are a couple of things that are still open-ended. We have not yet gone through our complete process. There are still some things that we're watching, and some of those things are on this board, and we'll talk to you a little bit about those as we move forward. Number one is revenue, our revenue outlook. What's going to happen for this year, next year, as well as over the next couple of years. Our labor contracts. As you know, we'll be starting off in the next couple of weeks our labor negotiating process with each of our collective bargaining units. That will have an impact on our budget cost as we look forward, especially over 16-17 and 17-18, as those are the 2 years that we'll be negotiating. And then we also have contingency levels. You as the council have made decisions and we've adopted a policy to grow the contingency, and we'll talk a little bit about that, what that means to the budget. And then the next 2 items, allocating vacancy savings and service levels. Again, that's something that we'll talk to you a little bit later in our budget process. Not today, but these are things that will have to be addressed as we move forward in our budget process, primarily in January, February, and March as we get ultimately to that trial budget. And then the final item will be talked about today will be debt service and property tax. The city manager and the CFO, Denise Olson, will be talking to you specifically about property tax as we move forward in this process. So revenue. Our budget is consisted of 2 things, our revenues and our expenditures. So this chart, what it does for us is it shows us our revenue over the last 8 fiscal years. Because before we can look ahead to what our revenue is going to do, we need to take into account what it's done over the last 8 years. And what you can see is on this chart, since 07-08, our general fund total revenue has gone up by about $23 million. And I believe this is something that Councilman DeCiccio, you've mentioned to us in the past. So when you look at 07-08 compared to the current year budget, we see an increase of about $23 million, or 2.2% in total. What this slide also does, though, is it breaks down our general fund sales tax revenue as well as other general fund revenue. And you can see that since 07-08, our general fund sales tax revenue has remained relatively flat. It's only up about $6 million, or 1.4%. Whereas the other categories, which primarily consist of our state shared revenue, income tax, and things of that nature, you'll see that they've increased by about $17 million, or about 2.7%. So as we look ahead, our revenue is something that we are, again, very cautious of. We're watching it very carefully. There are a couple of key things that have to happen before we can actually and officially accept or produce a revenue estimate for this fiscal year, as well as a revised revenue projection for next fiscal year. And number one is something that the city manager has already mentioned to you, and that is our holiday sales tax reports. Holiday sales tax for us is a very big component of our revenue forecasting ability. It really gives us a sense of how the economy's doing. It tells us what our consumers are thinking. It tells us how they're spending, what level of discretionary spending they have available to them. We won't have those numbers until February. There are a couple of other items which, for the purposes of this presentation, we're calling state issues. Those issues are things that we're watching, again, because they have the potential to cause us some concern as we look ahead for our revenue forecasting. Number one is our census impact. As many of you know, several of the cities and towns in the Valley have opted to do a mid-decade census. With that mid-decade census, it is our expectation that our relative population share will decrease. And with that decreased population share, we'll see a reduction in our state shared revenue collections. Just by way of anecdotal information, background, in 2008, Phoenix represented about 30.3% of the relative population share. And in 2015, we represent about 28.8%, to put it into context. One of the other things that we see affecting us or potentially affecting us as we look ahead is contracting. As you know, many of you know, in January of this fiscal year, or January of this calendar year, the state adopted a legislative change that adjusted contract sales reporting, and it shifted vendors or contractors from reporting their sales taxes in contracting, and now they're shifting them over to retail sales tax. And what we're seeing in contracting is a continued negative growth factor. In fact, over last fiscal year compared to fiscal year 13-14, contracting went down 8.5%. And through the first 4 months of this fiscal year, contracting is down about 21.5% compared to the first 4 months of last fiscal year. So again, it's something that we're very concerned about and we're watching very carefully. And then the next two items are things that are currently being discussed in current legislation. These things are being discussed as potential eliminations or potential reductions. And in total, income tax and residential rental tax to us are about $205 million to the general fund. So again, we have to be very cautious and very careful about what is going on at the state in regard to those two areas. And then finally, we've got three other items that have the potential to impact our general fund revenue projections. Number one is telecommunications. This is something that we've seen go negative for the past 3 fiscal years. We attribute it to a lot of folks like me and many of you, I'm sure, have cut the cord. You've gotten away from cable, you've gotten away from a home landline, and so now we're seeing reduced collections in this area. The thing that concerns us in this is for 3 years it's been negative. At some point, we hope to reach bottom and stop seeing negative over negative growth. We just haven't gotten there yet. The other piece here is fire ambulance billing. We also refer to it as ETS billing. As you know, earlier this year, the state enacted another legislative change related to ETS billing as it pertains to access reimbursement rates. And we should start to see some declines in our ETS billing this fiscal year as well. And then the third item on the list is our FAA jet fuel sales tax collections. Historically, these revenues have gone to the general fund. We just recently received word from the FAA that these revenues need to be deposited into the aviation fund. So in fiscal year 17-18, we'll see another reduction to general fund revenue by about $3 million, which is what this sales tax category collects. As we move forward and look ahead, talking about expenses now, we're going to shift from revenue to expenses. Our greatest asset in this organization are our City of Phoenix employees, but they also happen to be our most expensive budgetary item. So what this slide does, and this is a slide that you've seen before from our HR department, we've borrowed it from them, this really highlights for you over the last 3 labor contracts what our employees have given up in terms of concessions. So in 2010-2012 contracts, our employee groups gave up 3.2% of total compensation. They did that to help us close a $270 million budgetary shortfall. Then the second contract that went into effect in 2012 and ran through 2014, employees were restored half of those concessions, or 1.6%. The second half of those concessions were not restored because we did not meet the economic triggers that were put into place in those contracts. And then finally, the current contracts that we're currently under that expire in June of this fiscal year, employees took in year 1 a 1.6% reduction and a 0.9% reduction in year 2, which is the current fiscal year. So collectively, what this slide does, it builds up from the bottom up to the top. It shows that employees have about 4.2% of compensation that has not yet been restored. This slide, again, we're talking about employee-related expenses. Over the last couple of years, a lot of attention has been paid to employee compensation and, in particular, pension. So what this slide does is it shows you our general fund pension-related costs between 07-08 and the current year budgeted amount. And so what this slide does show you is it shows from 2007 to 2008, in total, general fund employee pension costs went from $96 million to roughly $192 million. That's over a 100% increase. What this slide also does is it breaks those costs down into two buckets. Bucket one being our civilian employees, or our COPERS-related costs. And on that, you can see our costs went from approximately $40 million to about $70 million in the current fiscal year. One thing to keep in mind with that, it's a 75% increase, but with the pension reform that this council has been very actively pursuing and pushing, that slowed the rate of growth in the COPERS area. On the top part of this graph, what we're seeing is our PSPRS costs. Those are the costs that pertain to our public safety members, our police officers, and our firefighters. That program, as you know, is administered by the state, and based from 07-08 till now, we've seen about a $70 million increase, or about 117% in that particular line item. Another way to look at our pension cost is to kind of compare its growth to that of our general fund revenue. So earlier we discussed with you our general fund revenue since 07-08 to the current year budget has grown by about $23 million, or 2.2%. When we compare that growth to our general fund pension costs, you see the increase is about $96 million. So between 07-08 and now, our pension costs have outpaced our general fund revenue by about 4 times. The final item that I'll discuss with you as it pertains to our expenditures is our contingency fund. As many of you know, our contingency fund, again, is our rainy day fund, as it's known in many other places, is designed to help us withstand any financial pressures that we'll see in a fiscal year, recessions and things of that nature. This council adopted a policy a few years back that we were going to slowly grow our contingency to about 5%. And this slide shows the incremental growth that we've worked on toward that goal of 5%. We're currently at about 4.6 or about 4%, or $46 million. That's the highest it's been in the history of the city. And as we move forward in our budget process, one of the things this council may decide or think about is, do we continue to grow that contingency? How fast do we grow that contingency? Because every dollar that we put into contingency fund means that those are less funds available to provide services to the community. And with that, we've got one other thing that I want to talk to you about, and this is, again, this is not intended to be an all-inclusive list, but based on the feedback that we've heard in these policy sessions, as well as our community budget hearings, as well as some of the needs that we know our departments have in going through our reviews with them, this list is it's kind of a snapshot of the things that we know we will have to deal with over the next couple of years, and probably within the 5-year forecast, and maybe the trial budget that we'll present to you in March. With that,
So the final thing we want to talk about in terms of our issues that we're looking for this year has to do with our debt service payments and property tax. And fortunately or unfortunately, Arizona has one of the most complex property tax systems in the United States. So as public policy makers, you really have to grapple with a really complicated public finance system related to property tax. Property tax in Arizona is 2 parts. One, if you remember back to that pie chart, is primary property tax. About 12% of our operating budget comes from primary property tax. The second part of property tax is what's called secondary, and that is restricted to paying the debt service on voter-approved general obligation bonds, which is a mouthful, but to make it simple, it pays for things like libraries, parks facilities, and even less sexy but necessary infrastructure like a storm drain system. That's what GO bonds do. And so when we take those bonds out, we have to pay the debt on them. That comes from our secondary property tax. So now I'm going to ask Denise Olson, our Chief Financial Officer, to walk us through this. Hopefully this is not a 3-hour credit class, but it is a good overview of where we are and the issues that we're dealing with here as it relates to property tax as we move forward in this budget. Denise?
Yes, thank you. Mayor, members of the council, over the last 5 years, the city has been following a property tax policy that was established by the city council in May of 2010. This policy has been stated in our bond documents and is given to our bondholders as well as our rating agencies. A couple of things I'd like to point out in this policy is, number one, we have maintained a $1.82 combined rate over the last 20 years. This rate was established in 1995. The second thing I'd like to point out is the use of a secondary reserve fund to cover debt service, and I'll get into this a little bit more in future slides. So let's look at what has happened to our assessed values, which is the basis of our property tax collections. You can see that we had a significant increase in assessed values, and it peaked in 2009-2010. Remember, we do have a 2-year lag in reporting these numbers. Then we had a downturn in the economy starting in about 2010-11 for the next 4 years. And then currently we are experiencing a recovery, a slow recovery in our economic situation. Now, this pattern is also consistent with what we have seen in revenue collections. What this chart is showing, and keep in mind we're maintaining the rate at $1.82 through all of these years, is that we have collected about $322 million in 9-10, and in 15-16 we're on track to collect about $192 million. That's a difference of $130 million, or a 40% decrease. Now, as you remember in the policy, we agreed to pay debt service with our reserve fund. So that amount is the green levels that we just put up on the chart. And that is what we have subsidized our our payments to pay our GO debt service. So a couple things I want to point out here is the red bars show the primary property tax that we collected, and the primary property tax goes for paying operation and maintenance costs associated with the general fund. The blue chart shows, or the blue bars show, the amount for secondary property tax, and that is used to pay debt service. And again, we're supplementing those debt service payments with the reserve fund, which is shown in the green bars. So all of the valley cities went through the same economics during that time frame. What this chart shows is what other valleys have done, other valley cities have done to address the situation. For the most part, they did not make use of a reserve fund. So what they did was they tried to levelize their levy so that they could make their debt service payments. And you can see that they did that by floating their secondary property tax rates up. The city of Phoenix, because of the policy, we chose to use our debt service reserve fund, and so you can see that our revenue in 2010-11 again was $284 million, and it in 15-16 is now $192 million, with a decrease of about 32%, whereas other cities have seen increases. So what does all of this mean to our average property owners? So in 9-10 or in 8-9, you can see that their property bills peaked at $407. The tax relief then kicked in because of the use of our reserve fund, and their bills then decreased to a low of $217 in 2012-13. So this really helped our citizens during bad economic times. And now they're starting to see moderate increases. Overall, the use of that debt service reserve fund has provided tax relief to our citizens for about $50 per year over the last 6 years, for a total of about $300. So what has this done to our debt service reserve fund? We have spent to date about $225 million out of the debt service reserve fund, and this graph depicts that. The red line that goes across the bottom, that was in the policy as our target fund balance for this fund, which is $75 million. That target fund balance is based on 6 months of debt service coverage. In 16-17, we will fall below our target levels, and in 17-18, we will be close to zero. Once this fund goes down to zero, based on the new state laws related to property taxes, we will not be able to replenish this fund.
So with that, the issue at hand for the budget is going to be a balance of the primary property tax and the secondary property tax to pay debt reserve, and how that impacts budgeting and our tax policy. So one option would be to maintain the rate and use the reserve the current rate of $1.82, use the reserve. It would permanently deplete the reserve. As Denise said, state law does not allow us to collect more debt service than we actually have to pay in a year. So that means we can't build the reserve up again based on what the state law has done with property tax. So once the reserve is gone, it's gone. And we would have to use other sources for debt payment in the future because that reserve will only last another year and a half or so. That's one option. Another option would be to float the primary rate down. That's what the policy said was an option. If you float the primary rate down and maintain the property tax rate at $1.82, we service the debt, but we would then have to reduce our general fund expenditures by, in this case, it'd be about $30+ million. And that would lead us to have to make some decisions about the general fund. A third option would be to float the secondary rate up, which would preserve general fund services and safeguard the reserve, which the chief financial officer tells me is very important to the bond rating agencies, but it would require that amount of increase. So this is talking about the average residential property in Phoenix. And so those are the three basic options that we're going to wrestle with. There are, permutations of each one of those and combinations. That's what we're going to take a look at in the next couple months as we come back to the council with budgeting in February and March. So the next steps then, just to lead to that, is the 2016-17 budget process. As we talked about being cautiously optimistic, we have to understand what our revenue through the holiday sales is, that we can set that at a dependable level. We have to complete our spending reviews that Mr. Barton described, prepare a 5-year budget forecast so we have a sense of what the future is. So 1-year decisions are important to make in the context of future year decisions. And then we would lead to a trial budget in March, which would wrestle and identify options for all 6 of these issues that we raised today through resources available as we present different options in a trial budget. So Mayor and Council, thank you for giving us this extended amount of time to go through this public finance information, and we're happy to have conversation and answer questions at your convenience.
Mr. City Manager, whatever the amount of time it takes is the amount of time you got. We appreciate it very much. This is not an action item for the City Council. We do, I'm sure, have questions and comments from members of the Council in just a few moments. First, there are 2 cards that I have from the public that would at least like to make comments as to the presentation. Mr. James Diebler. Diebler, I apologize. Please come forward. And you have up to 2 minutes to make comments, followed by Louis Schmidt. Also 2 minutes, so Lou, if you'd make your way over to the generally in the area of the microphones. And if anyone else wishes to provide testimony on the early budget presentation, now would be the time to do so. Mr. Diebler, the floor is yours.
Hello, I am James Diebler. I go to school at Arizona State University, and it is a good way to balance the Phoenix budget because it will help to save the city's millions in dollars and help the city of Phoenix to reserve their funds and helps to remodel parks and put more public transportation in Phoenix. And I am a supporter of Phoenix Population 400, the transit tax. It will help putting new routes in Phoenix and build more light rail at to Metro Center. Thanks for no time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diebler. Appreciate you taking the time to come down and providing that testimony. Mr. Louis Schmidt, up to 2 minutes. Any comments regarding the proposal, or at least the information provided today by our city management?
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the City Council. Louis Schmidt, President of AFSCME Local 2384. I promise I'll be shorter than the last presentation I made, Mayor. Inside joke. But anyways, like the in the city manager. We've had 3 straight contracts with concessions with the employees. Our employees keep stepping up to the plate to help the city balance its budget, but we can't do this alone. It takes a team effort by the council, city manager, and the city staff. I'm glad that we have Blair Johnson, one of our newest directors. Blair, shake your hand to the city. There you go. He's the new HR director. You know, we're confident we can work with him, but we need some help from our city council members too. In order for any community to thrive, we must have public services. Now, we saw the charts that were very depicting about the public safety, and that pie chart shows, you know, the council is supportive of public safety. We understand that. But we also have that big elephant in the room, which is the public safety pension system. Now, Councilman DeCiccio went to the Capitol yesterday, have a press conference about some action that should be taken for when it goes to contracts. But this council, what really needs to happen is this council needs to draft some type of letter together, some type of resolution to show that you are supportive, because when you say that you're supportive of the public safety fixing their pension, you're saving the Phoenix taxpayers money. The state controls it, but you, the council, have to, you know, the taxpayers still have to fund that. So we need help from both sides. You know, we're going to be willing to work with the city again, but in order for any community to thrive, we must have public services, and in order to provide those public services, you have to have revenue. It was good to hear Councilman DeCiccio. I don't know if you're new staff members, a city employee or not, but like you complimented him, we have many employees, probably some of these officers themselves, who are veterans who have served our country. So we must not forget that we have many countless city employees who continue to serve our country and have served, and we must not forget that we must not forget their service. So thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council.
Thank you very much, Louis Schmidt. Any other member of the public here to provide testimony on the information provided by city management? All right, thank you very much. Now I'll turn to members of the City Council. Do we have comments or questions by members of the City Council? Councilman DeCiccio, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a series of questions, but I've also got some comments that'll precede each of the questions. One, Jeff and Denise, thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. You guys were very thorough on that. Denise, I'm going to take a little issue with part of yours when you're dealing with the property tax. It made it sound like the City of Phoenix did the taxpayers a favor with their property tax policy, when in fact they did not do them any favors. Matter of fact, they helped manufacture this crisis that you're about to see. Since 2010, and Ed knows this, I've been talking about it, that this property tax scheme, this plan that the City of Phoenix put in place was literally going to create this crisis of about $38 million a year, and you're about to see that. So what's going to happen out of this, the third option is where the people are going to end up looking at. It's called floating the rate up. What it means is that the City of Phoenix is going to enact a huge tax increase on the public at a time that they need it the least. It's because of this manufactured crisis that's occurred since 2010. What's been happening is that, and I've been talking, it's this maximizing the primary, but what's been happening is that you have a primary and a secondary rate. The City of Phoenix has literally been stealing monies out of this secondary rate that pays for the debt, pays for the bond debt, using it from basically the reserve fund to pay for that. And sooner or later, you got to pay for it. So now you're going to be told that there's a crisis. There's got to be a way to resolve this. It's a way of couching it very nicely and very gently to the public, when in fact it should be more dramatic. Like, you are going to face a huge tax increase. What I'd like to do, if I could, I'd like to get what those numbers represent since 2010. How much this policy has cost us since 2010. How much money has been basically moved from the primary to the secondary each year, and what that amounts to. If I could get that. The second part deals with Jeff's presentation, dealing with the overall budget. What I'd like to do is, to some level, and I'm just a premise on my end and maybe just a hypothesis, but I do believe that police and fire kind of looked at, they're not properly portrayed in here. And I'll tell you why, because when you look at the pension plan that's up there for pension costs that are over there, it looks like a big number. But a lot of employees, City of Phoenix employees, are probably not in the general fund. They're in enterprise departments. I'd like to know how many employees are affected that are in the water department, how many employees are in the convention center, and then how many employees are in the airport. I believe those are the 3 enterprise funds. When you take a look at that and compare the actual number to number, I'm just curious as to what the real true pension costs are going to be when you take those employees out and do a number to number analysis. Right now, we've got probably close to 13,000 employees overall, maybe 4,000, 4,500 police officers and firefighters. maybe there is, I believe that there probably still is some level of disproportionality when you're dealing with the pension costs because of, just the way it is. But I don't believe it's as dramatic as the numbers will show up here, because when you start doing an apples-to-apples comparison to the amount of employees to each other. So if I could get that analysis, I'd appreciate it. The third thing that I'd like to get, and I think would be a better analysis as well, because we're always looking at just pensions, but it's not just pension costs. I would like to get an idea of what and I've asked for this now 4 times, what the total retirement costs are for the city of Phoenix for the last 5 years, where they've gone every single year, general fund and all funds combined, so that we can get an accurate view of how much the total retirement costs are as this thing escalates forward. The third thing that I'd like to ask for is what the total accrued sick leave hours are. 3 years ago, I did an analysis. The City of Phoenix has over 12 million hours of sick leave that's accrued. The City of Phoenix has a policy in place, and I'll lead all this into where I'm going with this, but literally lets individuals accrue sick leave year after year after year, and then people cash it in, get monies for it at retirement, or they're allowed to use it for their service credit, for their pensions. So all these things add up. About 2 years ago, I would think it was 12 million hours that were accrued that we end up paying out, and the cost was between $8 and $10 million a year. So not only do I want to see what it is for overall general fund, but what the payouts have been every single year for the last 5 years on accrued sick leave, just sick leave, so we get an idea what that is. So where I'm going with this, Mayor, and members of the council in particular, because this is the body that sets the policy, is that it's going to be nice when staff sits there and says, hey, we're doing the public a favor. We did no favors. The City of Phoenix did no favors to the public by creating this crisis that we're about to see. So where I'm getting at, maybe it's just a way of trying to work this thing through. You can't have everything. It just isn't going to work that way. The City of Phoenix doesn't have enough money. And we saw these by the numbers over here. The projections, the revenues are up here, but expenses are still exceeding the revenues that are coming in. It doesn't work that way. There are some reasonable levels. I'd like to go a lot further, but there are some reasonable levels, and I'm glad some of the union members are here too, so they can hear it, since you kind of dominate what happens up here, especially when it comes to these issues, is that as we take on any new City of Phoenix employee, we've now incurred a 50-year or more commitment, a 50-year commitment to take care of that person. We can always argue that that's the right thing to do, but sooner or later, these numbers catch up. We're in a growing economy, and we're still facing some issues in the City of Phoenix. It's not an unreasonable request to ask the City of Phoenix employees, and the unions in particular, to allow us, because it is allowing, because if you say no, it doesn't happen that way. So to literally let us look at some positions that we don't necessarily have to be done by City of Phoenix employees. If we get those savings can then be applied to the pension costs, wherever those costs are be. Let's say we save 10, 15%, I think it's going to be more. But if we're able to save some monies from just some non-essential services being looked at and allow others to do it other than City of Phoenix employees, sooner or later you're going to create a drag. It's going to create that wall. Because as your expenses go up, as the total compensation continues to go up, we're over $110,000 per person. Take employees out that are public safety, and you're probably 95. It's still an unsustainable number. You've got to be able to recover those dollars. If you don't recover those dollars, you're going to be facing things like this in the future as it continues to grow. We've got to be able to look at non-essential services that other people other than City of Phoenix employees can do that. This 50-year commitment just isn't going to work. It doesn't work like that. The other thing, if I could, and I'll finish with this, and I've got a lot to say, the property tax thing really bugs me if you haven't noticed that. But the police deserve a pay raise. The assumption is that their job is exactly the same as everyone else. It is not. They do a different function. They do a different job. They deserve more. I don't have an issue with them coming in and asking for money, and they should be treated differently. Their functions are completely different than anyone else over here. They have different functions. It's okay to pay people with different functions, different pay amounts. Likewise, there's a reason why you have managers that are receiving certain levels of income in the city of Phoenix and others that don't. Police officers have a different function. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions by members of this council relative to today's presentation? Councilman Gallego, please.
I would love it if we can re-examine what we've considered fixed costs in the past. So, for example, with tomorrow, as I was preparing for tomorrow's formal, one of the items is the jail costs. And I'd ask staff to look at if there's any opportunity to save there. One of the municipalities to the south of us is contracting with a different county from the one in which they are located, because they found that even when you include travel costs, that there was the opportunity to save money there. And so if we can go back and really look at that and question some assumptions in areas where we haven't. Staff had said that we did look at that 10 years ago, but I think it's time that we refresh that and go back, because I think there probably are still savings out there. Very grateful to the efficiency review and my colleagues' leadership on that, and we can continue to build on those successes and see if there isn't more to be saved, because we do owe it to the taxpayers to be very diligent about looking at these costs in a detailed way. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Gates?
Thank you, Mayor. Few questions. First of all, there was a discussion about the contingency, and I guess this will be a question for Jeff and Denise, and a bit of an unfair question, I'll tell you that up front, but, you know. What's your sense for the bond rating agencies? I mean, obviously, this council established a policy, desire to get to 5% contingency. What percent, though, do you think if we were to go in the other direction, at what percent do you think we might see some issues with the rating agencies?
All right, I would agree that's an unfair question. Jeff?
At least I warned you.
And I'm going to pass that. I'm actually going to defer to Denise, so. A lifeline.
So, Mayor, members of the council, I think there's two funds that we have to keep in mind here. So we have the Budgetary Contingency Fund, which we have told rating agencies our goal is 5%. And they seemed very, they've cited that number in the reports, saying that that was a favorable approach and gave this council and the city some flexibility in managing their budget going forward. What we'll be doing as we prepare the CAFR for this year is we're going to be comparing ourselves to other AAA cities. Even though we're AA, we're going to go ahead and compare ourselves to AAA and see what kind of fund balances they are carrying, so we can do some benchmarking there and give you some better information on that topic. The other thing that we need to watch is the Debt Service Reserve Fund and falling below that target balance of $75 million. I think that could be an issue that we are going to have to deal with talking to the rating agencies about if we don't have a financial plan to move forward.
You raised the issue of vacancy savings. Do you have a range at this point of what savings we might be able to achieve with potential vacancies being eliminated?
Right now, we don't have a firm number on how many we're recommending to eliminate, but what we have in the initial forecast are about $23 million a year in salary savings for our vacant positions. We'll continue to evaluate that over the next couple of months, but we do anticipate coming back to you either January or February with some additional information relative to our vacancies.
Thank you. In attachment 2, this Maricopa County jurisdiction's total levy, I'd be interested in seeing these numbers. So this has the levy for various taxing jurisdictions in Maricopa County. It'd be interesting to see these standardized either across, per capita or whatever numbers we might have available. Because right now it's really hard to, when you compare our levy, say with an Avondale or Chandler, something like that, to give us a little more context. So I want to talk about property tax a little bit. So what's your estimate at this point of the amount? Because there are three approaches that you put on the table, of course: floating the primary down, floating the secondary up, or increasing other sources of revenue. What is your estimate at this time of the amount of money that needs to be generated, whether or not, not getting into which option is selected?
So, Mayor, members of the council, what we were looking at in this option was about $38 million more a year that we need to generate in property taxes. Now, I want to caution everybody that both Jeff and I have to sharpen our pencils and really look at what that 5-year budget's going to look like before we really hone in to that number.
And if the 38 million, so in other words, it could be, so when you talk about floating the primary tax rate down, it would be to that extent to generate 38 million.
That's correct.
Okay. So, and the slide earlier showed, you said an estimate of somewhere between balance to $25 million surplus.
That's correct, Councilman. So that illustrates on that slide, there's combinations of those options where you might float down a little bit and add some other resources from other places. Those are all things we're going to have to work through in the next couple of months. But you're exactly right that there's places in between options 1, 2, and 3 where you can do some combination of choices.
And then what is the assumption built into that to get to that level to 25 million surplus? What's the assumption built in there for the labor union moving forward?
That assumes nothing about labor contracts other than they are the same as they are today. We didn't build in any assumptions about contracts in there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Neither increase or decrease. Our assumption was we just left it level set. We didn't assume an increase or a decrease.
Thank you, Councilman Gates. Councilman Murray?
Thank you. So start with that. So that, assuming no increase, assuming the, however you want to phrase it, but accumulated reductions in the last couple of years that you showed in one of your charts, that's going to be, that's the baseline, and it's not going to rise. That's where we get to the deficit that you're projecting.
Well, we're not projecting a deficit right now. We're saying all things being equal today, that we have between, and again, we give ranges because we're still early without things, but between $0 and $25 million of resources, not a deficit, a surplus perhaps. But that's where the challenges come in, because with that money, then you have to address the challenges of, do you want to increase service levels? Do we negotiate increases to labor contracts? What decisions do we make about property tax? What decisions do we make about contingency funds? What decisions do we make about replacing vehicles, for example? So all those things have to be put into that bucket of a potential surplus and worked on as a trial budget in March.
The bond rating, so just to rephrase, because I had a kind of a similar question to Councilman Gates. So you're going to try to figure out from other cities where a change matters, where we get benefit from increasing it, and is that a way to say it kind of in layman's terms, or where we get penalized for decreasing it? Because the 46, it's good to have a contingency fund, but the 46 million doesn't keep the doors open very long if something really bad happens, as I think you all found in 2008. But that you're nodding, so I assume that's basically what you're planning. Okay, when do you think you'll know that?
I would say in January we'll know that. We're about to finish with our financial statements, and that's where we're going to use to do the benchmarking.
Because yeah, I would say, put it in a range where we don't get dinged, and if it's too onerous, then maybe we can improve it, but try to find out how much that really matters. You talked about the population. So is our population in Phoenix growing?
It is growing, Councilman, but the surrounding areas are growing faster. So relatively speaking, our relative share has just decreased.
So, and the rural areas, I think traditionally have been declining as a percentage. Is that a fair?
I believe so.
You're really talking about Scottsdale,
We're talking Scottsdale, Chandler, Gilbert.
Maricopa County,
right.
basically. Yeah.
Right.
So what was the population in 2010 of the state?
I don't know off the top of my
If you
head.
don't know.
I have to get back to you.
I'm just kind of curious what our population was in 2010, the state's population, and then now. I know
We
it's
could
about
get
1.5,
that.
1.6 million versus probably
Right.
6-something million, but.
I could provide that for you.
Thank you, I appreciate it, just out of curiosity. The pension costs over time, and I forget what year was your first year, and I know my glasses on, so I can't see it on your chart, went up about 103 million over a period of time. Is that?
The general fund pension costs that we showed on our slide.
They went up about 97
They went up about 97 million.
million.
Yeah, 97 million.
It's hard to tell. Sorry, again, with the glasses, hard to tell from the chart. So the increase is 97 million. So if we hadn't had those increases, we wouldn't be talking about budget issue at all. We'd be in pretty good shape, being able to give raises, hire more police. We'd be able to do a lot of things if not for that. I think Louis Schmidt's comment is right on about we can't just pitch it all off on the state. If they come up with a plan and it's an acceptable plan, I think at the very least individuals, if we can't agree on it, should definitely weigh in and try to get something to change, because that trajectory that you showed, again, you don't really have to pull up the graph, but it's not positive.
Right.
Councilman, I think you raised an important point on that. I just want to emphasize that. The point of that graph where we showed 23 million of revenue and 97 million of increased pension costs was about employees have given compensation cuts. However, if you count pension costs into compensation, it's actually gone up. So what's happened is we've had to shift from compensation in the paycheck to compensation by way of the pension payment. Now, that doesn't feel like anything to an employee cashing a paycheck week to week to week, but the reality from a budgetary perspective is we're putting money into our employees. It's just that more of it has had to go to pay the pension costs than to be available for paycheck and that sort of thing.
And in some ways, if you break it down, it's getting redirected more to public safety because that's going up more. They're also a bigger pool of our employees than most other things. But, I guess to that end, I did have a question here. So we're having a lot of turnover. You have on page 3 on the green sheet, talks about turnover. The turnover is sort of ramped up. We talk all day long about why that is. But then it seems like we'd be hiring, people retire. They've generally been here longer. That's why they're retiring. So I assume we're hiring less experienced people to replace them at lower salary grades. But even doing that, and even with this accelerated turnover, your point is our labor costs are still going up because of the increases in the pension costs. Even without giving raises to employees, and even having fewer employees, because we're down about 3,000 from the peak, roughly.
That's correct.
So fewer employees, younger employees, and we're still not really saving anything. In fact, our expenses are going up.
Well, we're saving because
it's better than it would be if nobody retired.
That's correct.
Yes.
The point of the turnover rate is that there's sort of a physical limit to an organization's ability to recruit and integrate people, and we've hit that. So we're working hard to fill vacancies, 911 operators, police officers, those things, but it takes you a while, and when you have elevated turnover rate, as we've seen in the last 3 years, it means that it's hard for us to catch up to our vacancy rate.
And Jeff, or Denise, or all of you, it just seems like it's almost hard to track anymore with the economy, kind of where we're at, certainly nationally. But I read this, and I guess my interpretation would be things are kind of better than they've been in Phoenix, at least for a while anyway. Not the best they've ever been, but certainly better, somewhat more stable. Revenues are up a little bit from last year, which I think we're up a little bit from the year before that. If I remember, you don't have that here, but I think that's the case. You wouldn't necessarily divine that from news coverage. The stock market's all over the place. But at least things seem to have stabilized here in our neck of the woods. Is that a fair statement?
I think so, for the most part, yes.
Yeah. It just seems like the pension issue, again, to Louis Schmidt's point, if we got a handle on really the public safety pension issue, we'd be in okay shape. We're certainly better than what we're looking at on paper, which is mediocre at best. Is that a fair statement?
I think the reform to COPERS is showing that has dramatically slowed the increase in COPERS. And that same approach, whatever it's going to be, has to happen with public safety pensions.
And if it doesn't?
We'll see a continuation of that chart with that orange growing.
I mean, 97 million is about 9% of our budget. So we've carved out 9% of our budget that used to go to services, roughly, because we're really back to the revenue that we had in 2008. Is that a fair? I think you've shown.
Yeah.
So we're kind of back to where we were revenue-wise, but we've taken 9% of that away and given it to something that's not ongoing services.
It's where our efficiency efforts have really led to, is to be able to accommodate, continuing to provide services at relatively the same level with more expense than revenue. So the efficiency efforts have really kept us in the game.
At some point, it is Pac-Man gobbling up everything before it. Are you saying that trend will continue, and and we could keep losing 10% of our budget.
No.
So it's not going to be that bad? I mean, if nothing is done about the public safety budget,
We cannot continue to use, if, there's a natural point at which you have hit your efficiency limit. You can't continue to cut your costs in half every year and still continue to provide service. I think we're approaching that point where something has to happen with our public safety pension costs. I'm encouraged by what I hear about going on at the state legislature with reform efforts. That's going to be really important for us in the next couple of years to have those reform efforts take hold.
well, I am more than just a little concerned. I mean, we've talked about this before, so I sort of knew where these numbers were at already. It sounds like if other people and then voters don't make some changes, I mean, it sounds like it will be really bad, to put not too fine of a point on it.
If you continue that growth line there,
Yeah.
that is not a recipe for
So at some
success.
point, we're out of planning ideas, efficiency savings, and so forth.
You
You
hit it
better
on-
hustle and lobby some legislators then, I guess.
It's important to do that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman Murray. Vice Mayor Valenzuela?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you cleared that up, and I appreciate the line of questioning. We've made some changes to the COPR system. The voters have made changes to the COPR system. We can see some of the benefits already to that. The issue really is the public safety pension system, and that is something that cannot be voted by any member on this governing body. That's something that is controlled at the state. We need legislators to deal with the pension issue, just as the city of Phoenix has, because it's not just Phoenix that is going through this. I don't think I'm speaking out of line in saying that it's probably every city, every municipality in the entire state who is feeling what we are feeling right now with the public safety pension system, and it has to be dealt with at the state. I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that it will be done at the state in this next session, and that'll bring some relief to the city of Phoenix as well as our neighboring cities and every city throughout the state. Now, getting to the number, looking at zero to a surplus potentially of $25 million, that's strong work, Jeff and Denise, and of course Ed. Very strong work in just sticking to it and watching every dime that is going out. You're really doing a great job. I want to put it in perspective, though. I understand that employees, may not see the actual, funding when they receive their direct deposit or cash their check. I think everyone probably has direct deposit now. Yeah, I hope so, right? But they're, but it's there with the whole pension cost. That was an obligation through contracts that the city has to abide by anyway, as far as the pension cost. Some of those changes, again, being made by the voters in support of the employee groups. We still asked our employees to take concessions in each of the last several years. We have employees who are taking a number of furlough days. I think it's up to 13 now. Those numbers, $0 to $25 million in surplus, I'm sure that is considering those, or is it considering, it is considering that current trend of those furlough days and concessions. So as we have the discussion of what we should be adding, we really should be having that discussion. Should we start talking about making our employees whole again, if you will? We've asked them to take all of these concessions. Is it time to start rolling some of that back? And I think that should be part of the discussion. Like everything else that is on that list, I appreciate the idea of holding on to our rainy day fund and even growing our rainy day fund. At the end of the day, it's really not much of what we have when you consider how much our annual budget is and how much we have in that rainy day fund. I don't know if that would sustain us in a true rainy day. So it wouldn't be the right time to start taking money out of that as far as I'm concerned. But I just want to, I wanted to make those comments because, again, a couple of things. It's great news to know that if we continue to move in this direction, it's a much different message today than what it was just a few months ago as far as, considering this huge deficit that we may be facing. But, all things should be considered, all things should be on the table, and it's in full transparency.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Councilman Moran had one short
Yeah, I did
follow-up.
have one short one for Ed, so sorry to be picky. So I talked about a projected deficit. You said, I thought you said you're not projecting a deficit. But I mean, I'm reading the green sheet dated today, and I'll just read it. As discussed with the council in September, the higher than expected fund balance, so the $25 million we didn't expect to have because of the better than expected economy and revenues, the higher than expected fund balance of $25 million provides the resources needed to reduce the potential deficit down to $6 million to $33 million. I mean,
Yes,
what am I
Councilman-
missing?
yeah,
I mean, I
no,
guess I read this that you're projecting
correct.
a deficit.
No,
So
I apologize. So it's actually a very precise timing issue. That report had to be written and done for your packet on Wednesday, and it wasn't until Friday that Jeff had completed some work.
okay, I mean, it's dated today. It's dated December 15th.
I think it's probably dated for the
Okay, I mean,
the
all I
agenda.
know is I just
We had to
assumed this
submit
was
it.
today,
Yeah, no,
'cause
you're
it's
right.
today.
We had to submit it last Wednesday,
Okay.
and so actually by the end of the day Friday, we had information so that this presentation on the screen is actually.
So you understand why
most
I was
up to-
confused by your question. I was going to let it go, but I'm like, I know I didn't make that up myself. So, and we had talked about this before. Okay, thank you. Well, so it's better since last Wednesday. Look at us, doing
Yes,
better.
that's correct.
Fantastic. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Any other additional comments, or, again, this is not an action item. Councilman Noakowski, please.
Mayor, thank you. Jeff, I heard that there was a letter that went out to each department to make some budget cuts, right? Was it 9%, 10%, or what was that?
That was a 7% budget reduction, and what that is, Councilman, that is a integral part of the zero-based budget process. In the event that we should need reductions, it's good for us to have a list. So that is just something that we do every year. It's part of everyone who does or participates in zero-based budgeting across the country. That is one of the facets of that process. So this year we asked for 7%. Historically, we've been asking for 10%. But just based on where we are and where we think we're headed, we made a decision to reduce that down from 10% to 7%.
Did that surplus come from that 7%?
No, it does not. We don't even have those back to us yet. Those submittals from departments aren't due back to us until January 15th. And then we go through a very rigorous process to evaluate those submittals to make sure, number one, they're costed correctly. Number two, to make sure that they align with the council's priorities and that there's something that's politically palatable before we even would bring those back to you as part of the trial budget.
So basically, a 25 million might be even more, right, after the decrease, or?
But no, the 25 million is based on what we know right now. Again,
Right.
as we continue to sharpen our pencils on revenue and expenditures, it could change either direction. But the 7% that we asked for, those would only be floated in the event that we have a deficit, or in the event that council wants to take those items to use them to possibly cover property tax or cover any other types of thing that may be needed.
And over the last 8 years I've been on council, I mean, our staff has really taken a hit and cuts, and I really want to figure out a way this year to really reward those individuals that gave back to us. So I want to figure out a way that we can actually give that 2.3% back to our employees that really deserved it. I mean, when I came on the council, we were like a $277 million deficit. And if it wasn't for our employees coming in and other factors, I mean, we wouldn't have been able to get out of that jam. So I really think it's our turn to pay it forward and to really figure out a way to give back to those that have given to us, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Any other final comments? All right, excellent report. Again, no action item today. This is obviously going to form the basis of our budget planning process, including the dozens of budget hearings that we're going to have throughout this city before we make the final vote on our city budget in May. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. Our meeting is adjourned.